Something strange happens to millions of people. They work harder every year. They wake up early. They push themselves through stressful jobs. They hope that if they just keep going, life will eventually become easier. But somehow, their situation never truly changes. Years pass, sometimes decades, and they remain trapped in the same financial patterns. What's fascinating is that this rarely has anything to do with intelligence. It rarely has anything to do with talent, and it rarely has anything to do with opportunity. Instead, it is usually the result of something far more subtle, something invisible, a pattern of thinking that quietly shapes a person's decisions every single day. Psychologists sometimes refer to this pattern as the poverty mindset. Most people living inside this mindset have no idea it exists. But the moment you learn to recognize it, you begin to see it everywhere. In conversations, in workplaces, in everyday decisions people make without thinking. In this video, we are going to break down 7 signs that someone is trapped inside this mindset. And the final sign is the one that silently keeps the majority of people stuck for most of their lives. If you recognize it, it might completely change how you approach your future. The first sign. The first sign of the poverty mindset is believing that life is controlled entirely by external forces. People trapped in this pattern often feel that their situation is determined by the economy, or their background, or their government, or the people around them. And while these things certainly influence life, the poverty mindset exaggerates their power. Instead of asking, "What can I do differently?" the mind begins asking, "Why is life unfair to me?" This subtle shift removes something extremely important: responsibility. And when responsibility disappears, the possibility of transformation disappears with it. Because the moment a person believes they have no influence over their future, they stop trying to change it. The second sign. The second sign is an extreme fear of taking intelligent risks. People trapped in the poverty mindset often see risk everywhere. Starting something new feels dangerous. Learning new skills feels uncertain. Investing feels terrifying, but staying exactly where they are feels safe. What they fail to realize is that remaining in the same situation for years is also a risk. In fact, it is often the greatest risk of all. Every meaningful transformation in life requires stepping into uncertainty. Growth rarely happens inside comfort, but the poverty mindset prefers predictable struggle over uncertain opportunity. The third sign. The third sign is short-term thinking. This mindset constantly focuses on immediate comfort. What feels good today? What solves today's problem? What avoids today's discomfort? But the people who eventually transform their lives think very differently. They constantly ask a different question. What decision today will benefit me 5 years from now? That single question changes everything, because long-term thinking slowly reshapes daily behavior, and daily behavior eventually shapes the direction of an entire life. At this point, something interesting usually begins to happen. Some people listening to these ideas start to feel uncomfortable, not because the ideas are wrong, but because they recognize parts of themselves in these patterns. And that moment of recognition is powerful. Most people will hear ideas like this once and continue living exactly the same way. But a small percentage of people react differently. They begin questioning their habits. They begin observing their thinking. And they start surrounding themselves with ideas that challenge them rather than comfort them. Those are the people whose lives eventually look very different from everyone around them. But there is one particular mindset shift that separates people who remain stuck from those who eventually escape these patterns. We will come back to that idea shortly. For now, let's continue with the next sign, the fourth sign. The fourth sign of the poverty mindset is discomfort with discipline. Discipline requires consistency. It requires patience. And it requires doing things that are often uncomfortable in the moment. People trapped in the poverty mindset tend to look for shortcuts. They look for sudden opportunities. They hope for quick wins. But almost every meaningful achievement in life is built slowly, quietly, through consistent effort applied over long periods of time. Discipline is rarely exciting in the moment, but over time, it quietly builds extraordinary results. The fifth sign. The fifth sign is constant comparison. Instead of studying successful people to understand how they think, the poverty mindset compares itself to others and feels resentment. Comparison leads to jealousy. Learning leads to growth. Successful people often observe others carefully. They ask questions. They study patterns. They try to understand how successful people think and behave. But the poverty mindset reacts emotionally instead of intellectually. And that emotional reaction blocks learning. The sixth sign. The sixth sign is believing that success belongs to other people. Many people unconsciously believe that wealth, influence, and achievement are reserved for a different group, a different class of people, a different type of person. So even when opportunities appear, they hesitate. They doubt themselves. They assume they are not qualified. This belief quietly limits their potential long before action even begins. Because the mind rarely pursues goals it secretly believes are impossible. Earlier in the video, we mentioned a mindset shift that separates people who remain stuck from those who eventually transform their lives. That shift is surprisingly simple. Instead of asking, "Why is life unfair to me?" they begin asking, "What habits must I change to build a different future?" That question forces the mind to focus on action instead of blame. And that shift in thinking leads us to the final and most dangerous sign, the seventh sign. The seventh sign of the poverty mindset is refusing to question your own thinking. When someone believes their perspective is already correct, growth stops immediately. The people who change their lives are constantly examining their beliefs. They challenge their assumptions. They test new ideas, and they remain open to changing their perspective when necessary. That willingness to evolve is often the difference between stagnation and transformation. By now, you may have recognized one or more of these patterns in your own life. That is not something to feel ashamed about. It is something to pay attention to, because awareness is where change begins. Most people will encounter ideas like these once and forget them. But the people who repeatedly expose themselves to powerful ideas begin thinking differently. They begin making different decisions. And over time, those decisions slowly reshape the direction of their lives. If you are someone who values that kind of thinking, you already understand something important. The ideas you surround your mind with eventually shape the future you build. And the people who continually seek out ideas that challenge them are often the same people who eventually transform their lives.